All right. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Thumbs up. Great. This is a very strange experience for people on this stage because we cannot hear anything. However, it's going to be very interesting. So thank you for taking your time to be here. We're here to talk about seeing your workforce clearly. We're going to talk a lot about skills intelligence. Some of you I know a bit about this because we've spoken at the conference, we've spoken at work, and we've spoken about solving this. So very importantly, read all of these words as our lawyers told us to tell you. Now, I am Josh Newman. I'm the VP of Skills and Talent Readiness. This is a picture of me when I was 3 years old, dressed up as Robin. My mother made this costume. And when I, as every good husband does, I shared with my wife what we're going to be talking about. And she said, that content looks very techie. So humanize it in some way. She is a PR expert for creative agencies, so that is why there's a picture of me to distract you from the techie vibes. Even though I have skills in my title, I am a inherently skills skeptic. Now, my friend Mick over here, who you'll hear from in a moment, probably gets a little tingly when he hears me say that, not in a good way. But the reality is, over the past 15, 20 years, the ROI on skills-based organizations has not been there. Agencies and companies have been spun up to try and solve these problems. Companies have spent so much time trying to get perfection out of skills data, and up until now, we have not been able to solve for this. There's been a lot of spend and not a lot of return. Why? Because skills are a static point in time fossil record. They are a look back. Even if you were to get skills data 100% right for every person, it would be old as soon as you got it right. However, there is a question that helps us figure out what to do with the data we can get and do have. And that question is this: do you know if your organizations are ready for what's next? That's the question we're solving. That's the question we're trying to apply this concept of skills towards, in service of readiness. So let's talk about readiness. I'll linger on this slide for a moment because it's a bunch to take in. And this is the stack, as we call it, of what inputs are required to actually solve for this concept of readiness. And let's start from the top. So at the top, our business strategy. Where is the business going? A few days ago, ServiceNow and the executive team put on the Financial Analyst Day, where they laid out in a 138-slide deck that you can go access, which I did this morning, what it is we're going after. Where is the business going? How are we going to achieve the targets, the revenue targets that we're putting out there? That's the business strategy. You can also take a short-term lens and think about your objectives and key results for the year, your goals for the year as a business. Now, how do you achieve that strategy? Well, it's obviously the products and services and outcomes that you drive from your business lines. What is going to get delivered? We need to understand that. We have if you've spent any time at Knowledge, which we all have for 3 or 4 days now, you've seen a lot of the products, services, and outcomes that ServiceNow is putting out there in the world to support our business strategy. How do those get delivered? Well, obviously, there's been a lot of conversation in this workforce transformation, skills-based kind of world around tasks. Tasks are very important because that is how we achieve the delivery of these products. Now, tasks alone are not enough to solve understanding how work happens. We also need to understand how work happens across the business, not just within roles. And that's where process and workflow comes in. And we'll hit on that in a bit. If you understand the list of tasks, of which there are probably hundreds of thousands across the organization, you can start to, in a granular way, pinpoint the AI impacts on those tasks. And what you do with the understanding of those AI impacts and how tasks are going to change is you can then apply that finally to skills intelligence. You can understand the skills that people have today and need tomorrow. The need tomorrow, the demand side of skills, is really interesting, and it's necessary to understand how tasks are being impacted by technology. And at the bottom of the stack is where it all comes, where it all happens. It's the humans that make up our businesses. It's the talent, supply, and demand. Who do we have, and who do we need? So that's how we look at measuring readiness. That's how we look at the stack of inputs required. Every business out there has some of these elements. You don't need perfection across all of them to start making more intelligent decisions. Now, I'm going to walk you through an example about how we're using this concept of readiness, as well as skills intelligence in particular, in tight partnership with TechWolf, to solve a business problem. This is our ServiceNow story. You've seen across knowledge that ServiceNow is AI native, and not only ourselves, but we are supporting our customers in pulling them forward into this AI native world through the products, services, and outcomes that we deliver with and for them. Now, in order to get us to that world, we need a new kind of role. We need a new kind of role to support adoption. I was speaking to some partners earlier this week, and they talked about, the product could be absolutely perfect, the implementation could be flawless. However, if the skills and capabilities of the people leveraging the platform is not there, then it's all going to fall apart and it's going to be for naught. So we need a new kind of role, individuals who are thinking about this on a day-to-day basis. And that role is the forward deployed engineer. These are individuals who are full stack engineers. They're front end and back end builders. They have expert 10 out of 10 client conversations, and they absolutely love the green space. They love going into a conversation with an unanswered problem and just exploring, using hands-on keys with customers, solving those problems. It's a bit of a unicorn role. There are some out there in AI native companies. We are one of those organizations who are growing a group of forward deployed engineers. So, where does skills intelligence come into play? ServiceNow, we have about 29,000 employees. We have a handful of these forward deployed engineers. They are a bit of a unicorn role. And the talent team that manages this group, they are very intentional about how this group is made up and how, as they scale it, should continue to be made up. And that ratio is approximately 70% external hires, 30% internal hires. Why? Obviously, the capability around AI, machine learning engineering, plus the client facing, plus the green space loving, that is a rare find. However, because we are helping our customers deliver the platform, we need experts who know our platform better than anyone and have those other three core forward deployed engineer capabilities. So that's where we come in. It's very expensive to buy our way to scale with this specific role. The companies out there that have the mass of these, they can spend whatever they want on talent. So we have a process for going through the identification of the pipeline for internal talent. Let's walk through that. First, we need to understand what the hell these people are doing on a day-to-day basis, what they're talking to customers about, what tools they're using, how they're interacting with one another, with our customers, with our partners, and with our technology and go-to-market teams to actually get stuff done. Next, we have what we call, and you may have heard in some other sessions, something called talent signature that is essentially the fingerprint of every employee across the organization. And this can be applied to customers and partners as well, trying to understand everything we know about the capabilities. And the talent signature is made up of a collection of signals that we capture. Those signals include identity pulled from your HRIS or HCM systems, things like role and tenure, where you sit within the organization, skills, obviously, which we've been talking about and we'll talk about more. We partner with TechWolf on our skills integration, but they're also being fed data from within ServiceNow University and some other assessment tools so we can dial up the confidence in that data. Now, this is where it gets interesting because it's not only just who you are and what skills we believe you have through some intelligent inference, but it's actually finding ways to pull signals that measure behavior, right? In the flow of work, how are you using certain tools? How are you applying those skills? It's not just the skills, it's the application. And then finally, when it comes to outcomes, who are people who are driving higher quota attainment in the sales organization, or who's delivering more accurate code into the system? This is the structure for how we capture what we call talent signature that powers all of this. Now, the skills piece in particular, I'm just going to double click in there for a second. There's three things that we try and identify. The presence of a skill. Does someone have the ability to write an email, communicate, stand up here and give a presentation. Yes or no, it's pretty binary. The next dimension is very important, it's proficiency. Level 1 through 5, how proficient are you in that skill? And then finally, what we need to capture, and this is the most important piece of all of this, is the confidence in where the signal is coming from. And on the right side of the screen, signal weight, this is an example of how we think about confidence in the signals we're pulling into our talent signature. Starting from the bottom, if we're just assuming based on someone's job title that they have a certain skill, that's level 1. Now, it's not useless information, but it's hard to make talent decisions based on that. One level above that, again, in the information we feed to TechWolf, we get back knowledge about the skills our people have. Some of those inputs that we're giving them and receiving back are based on learning completions, certifications, credentials, all within ServiceNow University. That's level 2, that's pretty solid. Next up is validated assessments, psychometric assessments. So if we can say, because someone did a validated assessment that an IO psych developed, that they actually have this skill, great. Like that's pretty solid. We're hoping that most of the skills that we're capturing fall within that level 3. And then at the peak is level 4. Well, it says T1, I've been going backwards. T1, observed in production. What does that mean? That means we're seeing the behavior, or a manager is actually validating that that behavior is displayed and in play. So that's how we think about the confidence, the skill presence, the proficiency that's fed into talent signature. Back to the forward deployed engineer example. All of this information is being fed to help figure out who, across 29,000 employees within ServiceNow, can eventually become a forward deployed engineer, the next generation of this unicorn role. So this is how we approach this. At the top, right, 29,000 people. We look at our skills adjacency data. There's about 15,000 people, more than half the workforce, that has some skill adjacency with these unicorn roles. If I were to go to the engineering team, or even the talent team that supports the engineering team, to say half of the workforce can eventually upskill or reskill into these forward deployed engineering roles, they'd say, get out of the room. That's useless to us. So we started to figure out what kind of filters can we apply to that data to get a more precise view. So we looked at high performers. About 1,000 of those are high performers. Great, a little more manageable, still a bit too heavy to go through with that fine tooth. Next, AI proficiency. We sent out a in-depth AI proficiency assessment to every employee across the company. We got some really positive uptake. And so we see who's got expert proficiency. That gets us to about 500 individuals. And then finally, as we talked about with the external-internal split, we need people moving internally who have expert ServiceNow platform capabilities and knowledge. That gets us down to about 100 individuals. Now, we brought that number to the talent team and the subject matter experts who run the forward deployed engineering team, and they can literally go through 100 people with the help of a few others to see who actually fits and who doesn't. So we're using the balance of technology via TechWolf and our other signals, as well as human assessment of the individuals. So we've mapped the talent. We see that there's about 100 people who could upskill or reskill to the forward deployed engineering roles. Now we have a skills taxonomy. It's broken down into functional skills, AI skills, and human skills. And within that group of 100, we can look at the skill gaps that this group has or doesn't have. And what we see is pretty telling. There are some skills that we may or may not assume that people have as strengths and some that they have as gaps. And then what we do is exactly what you might expect. We partner across the global people team to release targeted assessments at those skill gaps, to work with my colleagues, some of whom are in the room, to develop precision enablement plans, structured programs, and then run people through exec coaching, specifically partnering people with those who have those skills, deploy those people internally, and where we need to fill in from the outside. This is real. There's 12-week rotational programs going on with internal hires to become the next generation of forward deployed engineers. We've moved from intuition to intelligence. So I want to bring on my friend Mick, co-founder and president of TechWolf, to talk about how all of this happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. So, as mentioned, I'm Mick. I'm one of the 3 founders of TechWolf, and fundamentally, we are a data company, a data layer for HR. Our main goal is essentially doing the heavy lifting, the manual work, automating the manual work. That makes it very easy for strategic HR teams, such as the one at ServiceNow, to really focus on strategy and what they're best at. So we started the company in 2018. We were enamored with AI. We thought AI was going to change the world. And in the beginning, we did a bunch of AI consulting. And one of those projects was with the European Commission. And they tasked us to build an AI model that could predict whether or not people could make the transition from oil and gas to renewables. And so in building that model, we had to grapple with skills inference, skill taxonomies, a bunch of problems which turned out to be very hard to solve. But we built a model that worked, and then we decided to commercialize that and bring that to market. But one of the things we realized was, if you want to build an HR tech company, there's plenty of organizations, plenty of companies that are essentially trying to own the application layer. So TechWolf really focused on being an AI and data company. We're partnering with ServiceNow. ServiceNow is an investor. ServiceNow is a customer, and we really pride ourselves on partnering and providing the best data out there. And so if you think about TechWolf, we essentially give you the intelligence and the data to act with confidence. We started in the skills intelligence space, which is essentially all about understanding the skills you have and understanding the skills you need. I hope by this point, Josh is a little bit less of a skeptic. But as we were working with some of the names you saw on screen, we realized early last year that we needed to go beyond that. So a lot of our customers started asking us, hey, TechWolf, can you help us understand the impact of AI on the workforce? And then talking to our research team, we realized, wait a minute, we have this incredible understanding of work and tasks that we can apply here. Same with market intelligence. We essentially have been scraping labor market data for about a decade. And in working with customers, a lot of customers started asking us, TechWolf, can you help us understand what's happening outside? We don't only need to understand what's happening inside our workforce, we also need to understand what's happening with the broader labor market. And so today we essentially help our customers look inward, look outward, and look forward. The use case we just described with Josh is essentially strategic workforce planning. And over the past years, we've essentially identified all of the use cases you can solve with skills, you can solve with tasks, you can solve with labor market data. But we saw one critical problem return over and over and over again. Now, I told this to Josh, I told this to the ServiceNow team. In most cases, we don't have an exceptional people analytics team, or the people analytics team is available for a quarter, a couple of weeks, and then they move on to the next thing. So time and again, when a real business problem arose, just like we need to find forward deployed engineers, there was a massive distance and a massive gap to go from data to insight to action. And so we've built an agent that essentially takes that gap, takes that time that it took, a couple of weeks, and brought it down to a couple of minutes. And so a question like, I want to hire forward deployed engineers, help me understand this role, help me figure out what the right mix would be, help me figure out who the right candidates internally would be. That probably took us a couple of weeks, but we thought, what if we could do better? What if, instead of weeks, that would take a couple of minutes? What if this was just available in MoveWorks right away? And so essentially, that's what we've been building. So step one, and this is a live agent, step one is essentially understanding the forward deployed engineering role. So understanding the archetypes, what type of forward deployed engineer exists. The core forward deployed engineer, the AI/ML forward deployed engineer, the founding engineer. There's different types of this role in the market that are emerging. And so step one is really using market intelligence to understand what is this role and what does it mean. Our agent directly goes to our labor market data lake that is about 2 billion job postings, helps you understand what's happening with this role. And what was really interesting is that this role really exploded in 2025. So what Josh was saying, everybody's hiring for this role. Everybody's hiring for this role essentially right now. And that makes it incredibly difficult. And this can inform some of those buy and build decisions that we were talking about. We obviously also want to understand the skills and capabilities. And what we're seeing right here is exactly as Josh said. It's essentially a role that combines coding, customer engagement, and deep product expertise. And so these people are incredibly hard to find. But the agent can still identify what the right candidates could be. So we have solutions consultants, some technical consultants, some platform people that are essentially already technical, but also have deep experience in talking to customers. And so ultimately, the goal is to get you to answers in seconds, not weeks. And that's what we're building together. That's what we're bringing to the MoveWorks platform. And I'm really excited for that to go live. So,
thank you. It's super exciting to see how, and you mentioned it there, imagine if all of that intelligence was placed underneath a MoveWorks-like experience, where all you had to do is ask a question in a natural language way, and the data would query exactly to solve that problem. That's the idea. As Mick said, answers in seconds, not weeks. However, knowing the information is just half the battle, right? And that is why ServiceNow University was built as the home for skilling and readiness, because there is no finish line here. This is constant reskilling, constant evolution, how tasks and therefore processes are going to be impacted by AI, and therefore the skills evolution that are required for organizations to deliver against that business strategy. It's not stopping. So if you have some time, go check out the Learning Playground if you haven't already. Talk to some of our ServiceNow University consultants, and thank you for taking the time to be here. All right.
questions?
Got it.
Okay.